Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Spartan.
And I'm Pudgey.
And we are back watching Histories and Law Season 7 today.
It feels like yesterday that we were just watching Season 6 Histories and Law, but only because Season 7 is very short compared to, but
shorter. Those three episodes, you feel it.
You do.
Especially because we got our recording schedule. That's like a whole week and a half less of recording. Just like boom. So we've reached Season 7 or finished Season 7 now. Right before we enter Season 8, we are watching the second last Histories and Law. We know many of you have watched this for the first time with us or just enjoyed rewatching them with us. So this has been a little bit of a side series that we've done. It's very law heavy, often insightful, sometimes challenging to my brain, but nonetheless definitely helped us understand a lot more from Game of Thrones than we probably would have had we not watched them.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely can get a little bit loopy during these just because they're so long and very law dense. I mean, if you saw the start of Season 6 Histories and Law, there's an example of that.
I'll give that terrible joke, yes.
Yes. But I don't know if I can really put that on the Histories and Law because that was at the start. So
that's just you and your terrible joke. Now, we do have a few spoilers to be mindful of here. They're just minor. So if you see us chopping away, we've got a couple of time codes from our mods, just a couple of House of the Dragon spoilers that we prefer to avoid so that we're blind when we do our reactions for that. So there'll be small portions that we will cut away. And if you want to watch the original video, you can do that as well to fill in those little gaps, but they're just small.
Well, I'm actually excited for this one. I'm hoping we get to hear some different stories again because Season 6 was quite a few new stories and it really helped us for Season 7 and just to solidify a few things for Season 6. So, yeah, I'm really excited because Season 7 so far, Season 7 in general has been, like, amazing. Like, I've loved every minute of it. It's been so hype and it's just been a massive payoff season for us.
We appreciate all the support over on our Patreon. We do post several episodes ahead of our Game of Thrones reactions there, as well as the uncut reactions. So if you want to check those out, we'll leave a link in our description. We're probably close to finishing Season 8 by this stage over on our Patreon, if you're watching this on YouTube. If you are watching this on YouTube and you enjoyed today's reaction, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel for more Game of Thrones reactions, and let us know your thoughts on this Histories and Law in the comments down below. Let us know if it's your first time watching it with us.
All right.
Let's go.
Let's go. Okay, so this first segment is The Golden Company by Jorah Mormont. So hopefully you learn a thing or two.
Well, the first I heard of them was at the end of Season 7 when Cersei threatened to use them to help win her war.
Yeah, no, we hear about them like really early on in the seasons.
It's good to know.
Yeah, someone wasn't paying attention.
Press play.
When I fled Westeros, I washed up where most disgraced knights do. The Golden Company. The best of the Eastern sellsword companies for what that's worth. 20,000 battle-hardened men, horses, and even elephants, ready to kill their employers' enemies.
Yeah, so they did mention elephants.
No matter the result. The Golden Company began as revenge.
So there's something
on
pretty
his
powerful.
Deathbed, a Targaryen king legitimized all his bastards, either to buy his way into the Seven Heavens or spite the family left behind.
Oh, wow.
As everyone knew would happen, his great bastards weren't satisfied with their father's name and wanted his throne as well, under the banner of the new House Blackfyre. Their true-born brothers disagreed. When the Blackfyres lost the Civil War, they fled to Essos to gather a new army in return for what was theirs. But wars cost money, and Aegor Rivers, the leader of the Blackfyre forces who now called himself Bittersteel, decided he could sell his army's services to other lords while waiting to return to Westeros.
AKA
the Golden Company was born. For their words, they chose, beneath the gold, the bitter steel, to remind themselves that they weren't just hired killers, but knights of Westeros who'd one day retake their home.
Oh, okay, so there's like a motivation
tried,
behind it.
Because they were too successful as sellswords. When Qohor declined to pay the new Golden Company for its services, Bittersteel dared what even the Dothraki failed to do and sacked the city. After filling the company's coffers, he declared that unlike all other sellswords, the Golden Company would never break a contract. So they haven't. But they also don't take contracts unless the odds are heavily in their favor. Cowardly,
How can they
perhaps,
think-
but far from
What?
foolish. Quite a
Yeah, I
few
don't think
wars
Cersei's
have
in their
ended with
favour.
one side learning the Golden Company agreed to fight on the other. Though it's not just their reputation that scares off would-be enemies. For some, it only takes one look at the captain's war tent surrounded by the gilded skulls of former captains, many splintered with the wounds that killed them. Any sellswords who'd waste that much gold must have a lot of it,
Jeez.
and nobody
Yeah, I
pays
know,
in
far
defeat.
out.
Could the Golden Company ever take Westeros? They get more practice fighting than the average knight.
Well, they're
Their
about to,
elephants
aren't
could
they?
make a mess on
They're
a
about to
battlefield.
try.
But men who fight for gold will never fight as hard as men who fight for home.
Yeah,
I should know.
that's so good.
I've done one. Now I do the other.
Yeah,
Nice.
Jorah.
That was nice.
That's actually interesting. So there is that motivation behind the Golden Company, they do fight for home in a way. I guess that might be kind of lost in their ways now because they've just been sellswords for so long, but
Interesting that they've got Targaryen origins again. Like the Targaryen dynasty is just so pivotal to so many
Yeah.
historical origins. It's
Yeah.
interesting how they really work their way in there. But yeah, so they only fight when they think they can win. But then are they assuming that I don't know how they think they can win unless they're relying on the Battle of the Undead to really weaken Dany's forces.
well, I'm assuming they don't know about the army of the undead, and I'm assuming they haven't seen the dragons. Like, that's the only reason why I would think that they can win. Because obviously the last they heard about dragons, unless this information has, like, crept its way to them, was that they were, like, dogs. Like, very small, like, dogs. So, who knows? But they're about to lose.
Damn. So this is The Citadel by Samuel Tarly.
The Citadel of Old Town is the greatest centre of learning in the world. Not that it has much competition, really. Most lords think of books the way they think of younger sons. Useful to have around, as long as they keep to the corners. Back when House Hightower still ruled Old Town as kings, a crippled younger son sought solace in books and those who wrote them, and became the greatest patron of learning in his day. Scholars of all sorts flocked to Old Town to debate and write and debate. After this Prince Paramore's
Sounds
death,
like my
his
kind of
brother
place.
granted land to Paramore's pets, as the wise men were called, though now they're known as maesters. Like the
Oh,
Night's
okay,
Watch,
interesting.
the Citadel accepts any boy into its halls, be he a lordling, peasant or bastard. Merit, not birth, determines advancement.
Okay, I like
Once a
that.
novice proves adept in a field, he forges a chain link that signifies his skill. Black iron is for ravenry, gold for sums and accounts, silver for healing, iron for warfare, Valyrian steel for the higher mysteries. Magic. though
Sammy should get
nobody
Valyrian
likes to say the
steel.
word in the Citadel.
Yeah.
Or explain how dragons fly or dead men walk. Once an acolyte has forged
real
enough links
questions
to
I need
make a
answering.
chain, he becomes a maester. Should he continue his studies, he might rise to archmaester and be given a ring, rod, and mask forged from the appropriate metal for his chosen field.
Wow.
The wisest, or most ambitious, of the archmaesters might even be called to serve as a grand maester on the small council,
So that was how
responsible for
Pycelle
steering
was,
the
the
king
hell.
and the realm, as well as keeping the Citadel informed of everything. The heart of the Citadel is the library, which contains tomes from all over the world on every subject imaginable, from the trivial to the essential to the restricted.
Oh,
If
we
the
know
world
about the
ended tomorrow,
restricted.
we could rebuild it with the knowledge contained in these books. Theoretically. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. But
Yeah.
as
I
every
know.
novice
Damn.
learns, the Citadel is more than a building, more than a library, more than the Order of Maesters. It is an idea that we may know the world. Not completely, not in any one man's lifetime, but piece by piece. With each generation
that.
building upon the knowledge of their predecessors where they can, and preserving it where they can't. And
Well, that's what they're meant to be
unfortunately for
doing,
us all,
but
forgetting it when they shouldn't.
Yeah, that was big, unfortunately.
I know, like, That's the whole point of this, and they're really not using it to their advantage. Wow, I cannot speak today.
That's pretty good by Sammy.
Yeah.
That was interesting. I like his perspective. I expected him to have a bit more of that outside viewpoint on the Citadel because he wasn't, as much indoctrinated in their ways, and he sees the limitations of them pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, there are many limitations, and they're just getting comfortable. But winter is coming, my friends.
But it does make it feel like this really just special place of knowledge. Like the way when you talk about it, you almost get immersed. Like, wow, there's all these books of the histories within the world of Game of Thrones. You always want to know all the little stories and
I know.
what it's about. Yeah. So we've got Samuel Tarly again talking about the prophecies of the known world. Okay.
The Maesters don't believe in prophecy, with good reason. The children of the forest supposedly could see into the future, yet were surprised by the first men who nearly ended their race, and the long night, which nearly ended us all.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Some Maesters posit that the children's magical sight was invented long after they vanished from Westeros, by singers hoping to thrill peasant girls. Not that most Maesters have much experience in what does or doesn't do that. When Aegon the Conqueror came to the Iron Islands, the priest King Lodos claimed his divine father, the Ironborn's drowned god, had shown him krakens pulling Aegon's ships into the deep. No krakens ever arrived, and even if they had, they wouldn't have stopped Aegon and his dragons without wings of their own. Confused, Lodos filled his pockets with stones and walked into the sea to take counsel with his father.
Oh my God!
Thousands followed him, but apparently the drowned god didn't appreciate a crowd. Their corpses washed upon the Iron Islands for years.
Holy
According
shit.
to legend,
years.
House Targaryen survived the doom of Valyria thanks to Daenys the Dreamer, who foresaw the calamity and convinced her father to flee their homeland. It could be true. The Targaryens were always a bit more. But as Maester Yendel points out, in the East, the Targaryens were one of 1,000 minor noble families, and in Westeros they became kings.
Yeah.
That reminds me of Alicent's
prophecy
daughter.
could have
Alicent's
drawn
daughter
them
in
to our
House of the
shores.
Dragon.
Politics can also explain the prophecies of Daemon Blackfyre II, a Targaryen bastard rumoured to possess the family gift. While posing as a hedge knight, he told a future Lord Commander of the Kingsguard that he dreamt of a dragon hatching at White Walls Castle, and took it as a sign that he'd win the Iron Throne. Perhaps if he'd slept a bit longer, he'd have dreamt of the King's Hand putting down his rebellion a day later, before it even began.
Oh my God.
Shit.
Most Maesters dismiss all Targaryen
To be fair, why would you
claims of
admit that?
prophecy as mystic nonsense, a relic of their Eastern ancestry. To be fair, across the Narrow Sea, there isn't a market without a warlock from Karth telling fortunes, or
Oh my God,
a
remember this
shadowbinder
guy?
from Ashai reading fates in blood. Or so I hear. From the Maesters. But when I was a boy, I overheard the cook whispering
So
to
how
a maid
true
about
is
a
it?
woods witch camping outside Horn Hill who was called Maggie the Frog. Now I realise it was probably a corruption of the Eastern word for wizards, Maggie. One day my
She the one
father
who
rode
gave
out hunting,
Cersei a prophecy? Looks
though
like
no
her.
game was in season, and whatever power she had likely didn't save her. Even the wisest maesters, however, have no answer for the Red Priests who prophesy about the return of the Long Night. For thousands of years, they've kept watch for the return of the prince who was promised, who will be born amid salt and smoke to drive off the darkness once again. Prince of what realm, promised by whom and to whom?
Doesn't
The prophecy
matter.
doesn't say.
Johnny
But at the very least,
is
it confirms
here.
that not even Essos
man of the
escaped
hour.
Long Night. I imagine the cataclysm must have confused the East. Unlike Westeros, they wouldn't have known of the Night King, or the White Walkers, or the war waged by the First Men and the Children of the Forest. They would have just seen a terrible winter descend and linger far too long until spring magically returned to the world. Yet somehow, maybe from passing merchants, maybe in their fires, the Red Priests saw the truth. Now the truth is
Yeah,
here again
okay.
for anyone to see.
It's fair, yeah.
But the Maesters refuse. They
Always
debate
love that music.
and
So
question and
mysterious.
doubt, not to
Is that
choose
meant
the
to be
wisest
Pascal?
course,
Yeah.
but because they're too used to doing nothing else. Most prophecies might be lies, but not all of them. The long night is coming. If we don't believe that, well, we won't need any prophecy to tell us our future.
I know, we'll be in deep shit.
Damn.
actually liked Sammy because he is questioning things. He's seeing both sides of the fence. He's like, okay, I get that they haven't specifically seen it. There's really no proof of it. Maybe there's just been things passed down. But even then, he's also cynical of like how the Red Priestesses have gotten their information. It's like, okay, whether it's fire or someone walked by, they saw it, passed on that information. So like that he's really just taking as much in from both sides. But in reality, he's seen it himself. He's seen the army of the dead. He's had to fight them. So the truth is the truth, no matter how it came to be.
I agree.
Perfect.
Now we have The Dragon Pit by Varys and Qyburn.
Okay.
Interesting pair up here.
Yeah, because usually we look forward to like Littlefinger and Varys or Qyburn and Pycelle, but Littlefinger and Pycelle are gone.
I don't know, because these were initially tended to watch at the beginning of each season, so I don't think Littlefinger's meant to be gone by this point. I think it's just they've chosen these two together, but from what I've understood in past, these were meant to watch at the beginning. We watch them at the end because sometimes they can be a bit spoilery.
Right.
Yeah, so everything you just said, delete. Now this one has a little spoiler at some point, so we'll just, when we chop ahead, just ignore it.
In its time, the Dragon Pit was a marvel of the world. Full-grown Targaryen dragons nested beneath its massive dome. And even on the darkest nights, the walls seemed to glow with the fire of the great beasts inside.
I love the way he speaks.
The site's previous occupant, the Sept of Remembrance, when Maegor the Cruel blasted it with dragon fire during morning prayers. The screams of the dying men echoed through King's Landing all day, and a pall of ash and smoke hung over the city for a week.
But as it dissipated, so too did the rebellion of the Faith Militant. The Sept of Remembrance faded from memory, and Maegor decided to replace a monument to the gods with a monument to his family, the Dragon Pit.
All right. Where we saw Dany and
however,
Jon the other day.
For after the Red Keep was finished, Maegor had hosted a 3-day feast for all the builders, stonemasons, and carpenters who had worked to build it. At its conclusion, he slaughtered them, so that only he would know the castle's secrets. So many men fled the construction of the Dragon Pit that Maegor was forced to employ the prisoners of the city dungeons, supplemented by skilled and ignorant builders from across the narrow sea.
Now we know why he gets his nickname.
For more than a century, the Targaryens
fed them and killed them
in the Dragon Pit. But dragons are not horses to be stabled or hounds to be kenneled. With each generation, the dragons became less massive, less swift, less long-lived.
Their former strength or numbers. Perhaps their line had been too broken. Or perhaps others intervened to break it further. But the last dragon grew no larger than a cat, and its death earned Aegon, third of his name, the epithet
Tiny.
Dragonbane.
Dragonbane.
What is a dragon pit without dragons? The roof remained where it had fallen. The great bronze doors rusted and fell off their hinges. Prostitutes cavorted where fantastic creatures had once fed and slept.
Wow, not so glorious.
Now dragons once again darken the sky. But they will never darken the dragon pit again.
Yeah.
Daenerys has learned the folly of chaining her dragons. The dragon pit is and will remain a ruin of a bygone age, when kings and queens flew high above their countrymen.
Did you hear when Qyburn was saying, I mean, we obviously know this information, but I think it was like as small as a dog, like one of the last...
Small as a cat, yeah.
As small as a cat. One of the last dragons. But I don't know if you picked up on it, but when Dany and Jon were in the dragon pit, I think it was last episode or the episode before, they were holding on to like a skull. So it was like the jaw of like one of the really small dragons. Did you notice that?
Who was holding on to it?
Jon and Dany, they passed it to each other.
I thought that was the skull of the dead. They killed the white, and it turned into skulls and ash, and then I thought they were playing with its skull.
No, it was tiny. It was like this big.
Where do you think they got this magical skull from the dragon?
Like it was just there in the ruins of the dragon pit.
Okay, right. Maybe, I don't know. I thought it was the white. No, I'm not convinced, but it's a plausible theory. But I thought it could have been the White too. You
Alright,
guys can let us know.
Yeah, you guys are Spartan know. I already know.
Castle Rock by Jaime Lannister. As we know, he sort of has a bit of sentimentality towards this, so we're interested to see what his views are come season 7 time.
According to legend, a huntsman once tracked a lion that was terrorizing his village all the way to its den. Though armed with only a spear, the man managed to kill both the lion and its mate, but spared the cubs. This mercy so pleased the old gods that they sent a shaft of sunlight deep into the cave, gleaming off golden walls. The hunter became a miner and built a ring fort to guard his new wealth. Nobody ever asks what happened to the cubs. Maybe the gods forgot about them and they starved. Maybe there never were any cops or lions or hunter. Doesn't matter. Someone found enough gold in that cave to buy whatever truth he wanted. Along with a castle that he'd name after his new family. Castle Rock. Thanks to that gold, Castle Rock soon became the largest, wealthiest, and best defended castle in Westeros.
Right
An army that
before it
struggled up the main approach
dried
would
out.
still have to climb thick, high, and well-defended walls. Should they choose instead to lay siege, the sea helpfully carved a massive cave beneath the castle, which over time became a private port complete with docks, wharves, and shipyards.
Yeah,
And so
damn.
to this day, even with all the gold in Westeros to tempt invaders, Casterly Rock has never fallen.
Damn.
At least,
I get why the
not in
Lannisters
battle.
are so
The
powerful.
castle is sadly all that remains of its namesake family, the Casterlys. According to another legend, my ancestor, Lan the Clever, swindled the castle from them. The most common story is that he found a hidden cleft in the rock and snuck into the castle. At night, he whispered threats into sleeping ears, howled in the darkness, planted one brother's
always so
treasure
extra.
in the room of another, and so forth. By the end of his games, the Casterlys believed a demon was haunting their home and fled.
Oh my
brother
god,
prefers
it's
a
such
different
the
version.
Lannister way.
Lan the Clever did find a secret entrance into the rock, but used it to have his way with the Casterly maidens. Eventually, the girls gave birth to golden-haired bastards, and the Casterlys had no choice but to accept their father into the family. In gratitude, he changed the family name to honor himself and House
Oh
Lannister.
my goodness.
Lannisters were born by snakes.
The
They were
Casterlys
always
used the
treacherous.
gold of the rock to become lords. The Lannisters became kings. For thousands of years, the Kingdom of the Rock ruled the Westerlands. When the Ironborn became a nuisance, my ancestors sailed to the Iron Islands and returned with 100 Ironborn hostages, promising to hang one from the rock every time the Ironborn dared
So I think
raid
that's
our
what
shores.
Jamie was speaking
The
about to
Ironborn
you.
sailed away. Well, after 20 or so. When the
Damn,
Andals
that's
arrived after
crazy,
sweeping
dude.
across the rest of Westeros, we invited
So
their sons
brutal.
and daughters into the rock as squires and court ladies. I don't think we ever had to hang any of them. Finally, Aegon the Conqueror defeated us on the Field of Fire, and my ancestor knelt. Still, little changed but titles and taxes. For when Visenya Targaryen saw the rock, she gave thanks that my ancestor had met Aegon on the field. Even Dragonflame would have washed over the castle like the waves and left just as much a mark.
Yeah,
Now the
wow.
mines are dry, and Casterly Rock is just that, a rock.
Yeah,
Hey,
so
Gold
damn
has
the
passed
rock.
into legend, just like the merciful huntsman and Lan the Clever. As will our family if we lose this war. Unlike the Casterlys, however, we won't even have a castle to remember our name.
I know.
yeah, well,
Well, that's the biggest thing that Cersei is literally forgetting. Like, she wants this legacy and whatnot. I don't know. I think at this point she just wants survival. But at what cost? Like, I don't know. Wouldn't you rather be alive, not queen, but somewhat important, and just live a peaceful life? I don't know.
okay, so now we've got The Reigns of Castamere by Jaime Lannister again.
Oh, this damn song.
Yeah.
When disciplining unruly vassals, most lords sent armies. My father Tywin only had to send a singer. There's no faster way to dull a
Shit.
vassal's ambition or any festive occasion than hearing the reigns of Castamere. The House Reign of Castamere was an old and proud house that was slowly sinking back into the muck. Their mines had run dry. Without gold, they turned to a more common source of wealth: daughters.
Lady Ellen Rain was betrothed to my great-uncle, but when he fell in battle, Lady Ellen sought comfort in his twin brother's bed, beating out the other woman he'd promised to marry. Then
Damn.
the husband, who had shared his twin's wife, shared his twin's death on a different battlefield. Lady Ellen flung herself at the new, and married, heir to the rock. But my grandfather
and
Titus
married.
was more kitten than lion. He ran away and told his
Kitten.
wife of Lady Ellen's designs, and Lady Ellen soon found herself married off to Walter and Tarbeck, lord of another failing house. The Rains and Tarbecks should have sunk into obscurity together, and they would have if not for my grandfather becoming Lord of Casterly Rock. At first, the Westerlands laughed with the Laughing Lion, as the jovial Titus was called. But when men realized this lion had neither teeth nor claws, they started to laugh at him. None laughed harder than the Rains and Tarbecks. Though Lady Ellen was no longer welcome at Casterly Rock, Titus didn't refuse her brothers, Roger and Reynard Rain, not even when they asked for extravagant loans. Thanks to our family's gold, Lady Ellen restored Tarbeck Hall to a splendor she hadn't known since being cast out of our home. When my grandfather broached the subject of repayment, Roger and Reynard only laughed. And soon enough, my grandfather was laughing along with them. Then my father Tywin returned from the War of the Ninepenny Kings, where he'd seen how the rest of the realm sniggered at House Lannister. Determined to restore our proper place, my father demanded the immediate repayment of all debts to the Rock, or a hostage from those who couldn't pay.
Of course he did.
Reynard Rain merely laughed when he received the Raven. Lord Walder and Tarbeck chose to ride to Casterly Rock, sure that he could cow Lord Titus into rescinding my father's commands. He could have, except it wasn't Titus who met him at the gates, but my father, who had Lord Walderman thrown into a dungeon.
Oh,
Lady
shit.
Ellen protested. The Rains
so
threatened
brutal.
war,
He gets shit
and finally,
done.
my grandfather broke and released Lord Tarbeck with an apology, no less. As if bathing himself in shame, Titus further forgave all the Tarbeck debts to our house. To celebrate the end of hostilities, Lord Roger feasted Titus at Castamere, and the two lords proclaimed their friendship for eternity.
I would not be happy with that.
My father allowed eternity to last a year. When he summoned the Rains and Tarbecks to Casterly Rock to answer for their crimes, they rose in revolt, exactly as he expected. Their defiance gave him a pretext to call his banners and ride for Tarbeck Hall and Castamere with an army behind him. He didn't even bother to inform my grandfather.
Oh, of course
man.
not.
Descended on
He
the
didn't have
Tarbeck
respect
so
for his
quick
father,
that
remember?
Lord Walderan had no time to gather his forces and rode against my father with only his household knights. Soon, his head, his sons' heads, and the heads of any man with Tarbeck blood adorned the spears of the Lannister vanguard as it marched to Tarbeck.
Tywin was ruthless.
At their approach, Lady Ellen Tarbeck closed her gates and sent ravens to her brothers at Castamere. She assumed they'd have more than enough time to muster their armies and break what would be a long siege. My father had trebuchets up in a day and brought down the keep within hours.
Oh, shit.
Lady Ellen and her son were crushed in its fall. When the Tarbeck
Shit.
forces surrendered, my father put their castle to the torch.
Damn, dude. Tywin wasn't playing. And now we've got a great ad.
Roger Rain arrived with his army just in time to see the flames consuming his sister's home. He charged my father's camp, hoping surprise would win out over my father's greater numbers.
Yeah, he was not
With
surprised.
half his men dead on the field and a crossbolt in his back, Lord Roger fled
Shit.
back to Castamere. The
Crossbolt
Lannister
in his
host
back.
arrived at Castamere 3 days later. Like Casterly Rock, the seat of House Rain had begun as a mine. When the gold gave out, the mine shafts were widened into halls, galleries, and bedchambers deep beneath the earth. The Rain brothers didn't have the men to defend the castle walls and retreated into their underground stronghold. From this relative safety, they offered terms to my father to avoid a long siege.
That
My
didn't go
father
well for
didn't
them.
reply. Instead, he
course he
commanded
didn't.
that the mines be sealed with stone and soil until there was no way in and no way out. When that was completed, it
Oh
took
my God.
less than a day to dam the stream beside the castle and only 2 to divert it to the nearest mine entrance.
Oh my god, they
The
flooded.
Rains had taken more than 300 men, women, and children into the mines. A few guards reported hearing faint screams and shouts below them one night, but come dawn, the earth was silent once again.
Holy crap. Tywin's
And now
ruthless,
the rain
dude.
weeps o'er their halls, with no one left to hear.
Damn.
Oh my god.
That is some brutal shit.
I mean, that's the origins of Reigns of Castamere, let alone the Red Wedding and things
So
like
it's very
that.
fitting for the Red Wedding.
That's why when Catelyn turned around, like real quick, she knew something was up. I mean, that makes much more sense, doesn't it?
Well, like it was said as well, that just playing that song to people who were proposing war would be enough to silence it. Like, people knew what that meant. It reminded them of what Tywin could do, you know?
Yeah, and that line makes sense about Catelyn's response to it. I mean, you
Shit.
said it in the last segment when Jamie was speaking.
I'm pretty wise like that, yes.
Well, you didn't even know what I was about to say.
Sure, something very wise.
Maybe I was going to say you were wrong.
Get to the point.
The Lannisters were literally built of being snakes. No wonder why they like Sneaky Snake myself so much, honestly. Like, everything that they did, I get it. Everyone kind of fought for what they've got now and then held it. And it was a war of strength. But, I don't know, just the way they did it, like sneaking into the castle, whispering these things, thinking that it's haunted. Like, it's just such a, eerie feeling.
Yep. So now Littlefinger's talking. So as I had suggested, the man is still alive. And we've got the hand of the king.
He's talking to us down from hell.
Now, luckily I checked because Pudgey's not on our A game today. There is a spoiler in this one as well, unfortunately. So we're going to skip at a certain point, I regretfully admit, because Littlefinger's usually quite interesting. So,
I know.
Oh, it is what it is. We must remain pure.
Yes, virgins.
What the king dreams, the hand of the king builds. Or, so say the kings, the hands, and the lords who wish to be hands. The lowborn put it differently. The king eats, and the hand takes the shit. The fact is, most kings hate ruling.
We've heard that a few times, yeah.
Yeah.
Their only qualification is blood. So, naturally, they're wary of a seat made of blades. Far better to find other men to rule in their stead. But how should a king select his hand? Family? One king chose his brother, Prince Maegor, a warrior who was proud and arrogant.
It's not always the best
Maegor agreed to
option.
marry the High Septon's niece to unite the faith and the crown, but then secretly wed a second wife in a Valyrian ceremony, artfully combining bigamy and heresy. And when word of it got out, the king was forced to exile Maegor and choose a Septon as his new hand. But the damage had been done. The king had trusted in family, and his brother had set off a rebellion that would claim his rule and his life. Perhaps it's no surprise that the wisest king in the history of Westeros made the wisest choice for his hand. The son of a lowly blacksmith, Septon Barth had few options for advancement in the world, and even fewer after his family gave him to the faith as a child.
Oh, right.
But
So low
a loyal
ambition.
record keeper, Barth impressed the king so much that the king, defying all his highborn advisors, made Septon Barth his hand. 40
Right.
years of prosperity ensued. So much did Barth accomplish that many lords and commoners credited him with sorcery. No other explanation could they accept for a man without blood or skill at arms. Because what Barth had was rarer than both. A sharp mind. Years later, the realm had
Littlefinger
no
loves
sharper
that.
mind than Lord Tywin Lannister hand to King Aerys Targaryen. Or, as history remembers him, the Mad King. He saw assassins and plots in every shadow, heard whispers in silence, and burned men alive. But his greatest madness by far
Jesus.
was driving away Lord Tywin.
Doesn't get old.
The Mad King then cycled through every mistake of his ancestors. Soldiers, toadying lords, and at the end even an alchemist, perhaps to save the crown's growing expenses on wildfire. Unfortunately,
They were
he
like
didn't
foul
save
hands.
his crown or his dynasty. The new King Robert chose his foster father, Lord John Arryn, as his hand. The wisest decision Robert ever made. Not that it had many rivals. Too bad it proved so fatal.
Yeah, because of
Lord Arryn
him.
was a man of honor from an
Littlefinger.
ancient
Snake.
and proud family.
But honor is no shield against the corruption of the capital, as Lord Arryn's successor, Ned Stark, learned as well.
Oh
Perhaps
my
the
god,
hand
Snake.
of the king is a flawed idea. Westeros needs a ruler who can rule, who builds what he dreams himself. A king who can't govern his
Interesting.
kingdom is no
Yeah, but
king,
he thinks it's him.
and a hand who
Yeah.
shits what another man eats is an arse.
True.
Yeah, well, I mean, remembering how treacherous Littlefinger was, he deserved what he got.
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe he thought that he would be a great ruler.
I mean, I believe it. No one lived his hype train more than him.
Yeah.
He was his own hype man for the whole show.
I know, literally. And then that got him killed. So obviously it wasn't working out for him.
Isn't it funny? He didn't die in King's Landing. He died in Winterfell, like of all places.
Why is that funny though?
Because King's Landing is the most treacherous, hardcore place, and somehow he managed to stay a step ahead of that. And then where he couldn't stay a step ahead of was in Winterfell.
Yeah, I think his mistake was underestimating both Arya and Sansa.
Yeah.
For sure. That makes sense though, that scene where he's looking through on Arya. It's like this whole setup was made just to fuck with Littlefinger, which I love.
Okay, so now we've got Highgarden by Randall Tarley, and then we know they were very loyal to the Tyrells who occupied Highgarden, so it'll be interesting. Didn't expect him to get burned so soon the way he did.
And his son. So Sammy is literally the only son left.
So he could become the Lord now, maybe. I know he renounced vows as a Night's Watch, but hey, everyone's breaking the rules these days. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I know.
The Tyrells claim Highgarden, but they didn't build it. They claim descent from the first king of the Reach, but only through the female line. The truth is that House Gardner built Highgarden when they ruled the Reach as kings, not
He's
lords.
very like factual, matter
As their
of
name
fact.
attests, they were the true heirs of Garth the Gardener, who founded their house and the kingdom, and brought law and order to the Reach. He built Highgarden as a fortress, not a pleasure palace. In those dark days, the Ironborn raided up and down the Mandor at will, and the Dornish were even more trouble than they are now. While enduring
Yeah, I
shame,
can imagine.
a Dornish army once sacked Highgarden and destroyed the Oaken Seat, the living throne of the
shit.
Gardener kings planted by Garth Greenhand himself. The Gardeners responded wisely, sending armies of their own to pacify and defend the countryside. My ancestors at Horn Hill joined them, as did the other great families of the Reach.
Sounds very proud of
Even
that.
House Hightower yielded without a fight, choosing marriage into House Gardner over a war that would weaken us against outsiders.
Right.
Otto's
But
house.
the outsiders still came. The Andals swept across Westeros, destroying many ancient families and kingdoms. When the invaders
Yeah,
arrived
that's
at the
why we
Reach,
don't hear about a lot
led
of
by
them.
Sir Alistair Tyrell, House Gardner chose accommodation over battle, hoping honors and marriages would sate the foreigners' ambitions. The Tyrells were welcomed into service as hereditary stewards of Highgarden. Thousands of years later, they repaid the Gardeners for their acceptance.
I
When
know,
Aegon
far
Targaryen
out.
declared that Westeros was now his, King Mern IX allied with King Loren Lannister of the Westerlands. Together, they fought to save Westeros from another foreign barbarian, whose family practices put decent men to shame. But the dragons won. And the field
Yeah,
of
I get why
fire
he had that
claimed
spitefulness
Mern and
toward
all
them.
his sons, grandsons, and brothers. Instead of using the castle for what it was built to do, Harlan Tyrell surrendered it to Aegon without a fight. In exchange, Harlan was given the castle his family had served for thousands of years, with all its
Right.
attendant lands and lords,
Then you went to yield the Planetary game.
including my family. Perhaps the Tyrells were great once, but Harlan gave away their honor when he opened gates that weren't his to open, and to
Yeah.
a foreign invader. Ever since, there hasn't been a Lord Tyrell who wasn't a mockery of the title.
Oh,
Women
shit.
rule that house. Everybody knows it. And look what
Yeah.
it's wrought. Their proper lord, heir, and queen, dead. Leaving only
I
a shrunken
know.
old woman who forgets her loyalties to the realm, either in grief or dotage.
Who's dead as
Her
well.
thorns won't protect her more than any other rose when the hand comes to rip them out.
Well, she died after this was meant to be watched.
No, of course, but I'm just
Interesting.
saying,
It
like,
foreshadows a lot at why he chose to side with the Lannisters in the end, because he
Yeah.
lost respect for the Tyrells and the way they carried themselves for a long time.
Yeah, which I get. And I think what I got from this was obviously that, you know, because he was saying that the dragons and all that kind of thing puts decent men to shame. And I think by decent men, he means people who like fight, who just,
Traditional warriors.
Yeah. So, yeah, he really has respect for the old ways, and anything that kind of fucks with that, he's just like, yeah, not it. All about his honor, all about, you know, the traditional way of doing things.
I think Stannis would have liked him.
Yeah.
He was definitely a man of duty.
I know. I wonder if they knew each other.
We've got Valeria's last scion, House Targaryen. Or Scion.
Maybe.
House Targaryen, I don't know what that means, but House
But
Targaryen by
Viserys.
Viserys Targaryen. Okay, we're going to hear that voice again.
That's so strange. What the hell? Okay.
This world wasn't always so small and petty. Thousands of years ago, while the rest of men prayed to gods, the Valyrians became them. Through magic or sheer will, they mastered the greatest creatures in history. A horse grants man dominion
He was
over
always
land,
infatuated by
a
them.
ship over the
Never
sea.
got to see it.
But dragons gave us the sky, and everything and everyone beneath it.
Yeah, it's
At
true.
its height, my ancestors ruled the known world. Whatever parts we didn't weren't worth knowing. Our capital of Valyria shamed the magnificent cities of the East, for hammers and chisels were no match for dragon fire and sorcery. It was a city and an empire built to last until the end of time.
But it didn't.
It didn't. 400 years ago,
got a
the
knack
doom
for it.
fell on Valyria. Mountains cracked open like eggs, lakes and rivers boiled, fountains
look
of
at the
fire,
dragons
ash
falling.
and smoke
Crazy,
spewed from
dude.
the ground, so high and so hot that even dragons burned in flight.
Wow.
The land splintered, and the angry sea rushed in. In hours, the greatest city in history became history. But my
Yeah,
ancestors
wow.
didn't burn or drown with the rest of their race. 12 years before the doom, despite the sneers of his rivals, Aenar Targaryen abandoned the capital with his family. Legends claim that his daughter foresaw the destruction of the city in a dream. More likely, Aenar met with some mishap at court and chose exile over execution. He and
Oh,
House
do you reckon?
Targaryen
Okay,
slipped
so
away
there's,
to a
like,
dreary,
differing
remote,
views about that.
God-forsaken island.
But it doesn't sound like Viserys. Viserys
Forsaken.
usually glorifies his
No
people.
longer. With arts now lost to the world, we transformed a tiny outpost into Dragonstone, a fortress fit for the last dragon lords. Then Aenar's descendants settled into it like a tomb for their lost homeland. Until Aegon. When he looked east, he saw the past, old, tired, dead. But when he
Yeah.
looked west, he saw the future. Gold in the ground, gold in the fields, and no dragons in the sky but his.
Wow,
He and
okay.
his sisters,
Very ambitious,
Rhaenys
man.
and Visenya, flew over the great continent, ostensibly visitors to a strange land. But when Aegon returned, he ordered construction of a massive table carved in the shape of Westeros, with all
The
the
iconic
notable rivers
table.
and mountains that they had seen. A personal map of the Seven Kingdoms. Then
Damn.
ruled by 7 squabbling families.
Yeah, I know.
House Durrandon held the Stormlands from their seat at Storm's End, due south of Dragonstone. House Horror of the Iron Islands had also conquered and enslaved the Riverlands and ruled them from Harrenhal.
All the
a
houses we
monstrous
haven't heard much
castle
about.
rising on the shore
Yeah.
of the God's Eye. House Stark held the
Stark
frozen
still stands strong,
wasteland of
baby.
the north, the
Still
oldest,
stands strong.
largest, and emptiest of the kingdoms. House Lannister held the Westerlands, the wealthiest kingdom, thanks to their gold mines. House Gardner held the Reach, the second wealthiest kingdom thanks to their crops. House Arryn held the Vale, or rather the Vale held them. The mountains were impassable
true.
except through the Bloody Gate, which had never been taken. House
Yeah, it's a mad
Martell
castle.
held the deserts of Dawn, probably because no one else wanted them.
Aw.
Together, the Seven Kingdoms made Westeros, a realm that wasn't yet a realm, ruled by great families who didn't know what greatness was. Aegon would teach them.
Okay, there's that little.
There's that little, yeah. It's interesting that they brought
phrase.
Viserys in and I don't know where to talk.
I know. Like, I wonder why we're getting his perspective now.
It makes me remember too, you shut me down, but I'm still got to check that with our mods. The scene where we saw a flashback of Rhaegar getting married to Lyanna, I
Yeah.
could have sworn that was Viserys' actor, but because it's been like years, because it looks so much like Viserys, but a more manlier version, and I thought that he had grown older. At the time, I was like, holy shit, that's Viserys' actor. To make him look like his brother, but obviously he'd grown older in 8 years.
Potentially. Because it did look like him, but I was like, oh, maybe they just found someone similar.
Yeah, no, I'm confident. I'm
That's
thinking
true,
it was him.
because when Game of Thrones started, like, it's literally 7 years later,
Yeah.
right?
So he looked like he was like early 20s, would have been like 30 by the time. So he
Or
looked like,
actually, maybe even more years, because some seasons had a 2 years
yeah.
gap.
Either way, the probably like a decade, right? So
Right.
I just thought that he looked older and it was perfect to make him look like his brother.
Yeah.
So I think that was the actor.
Do you reckon? We have to ask.
Oh, I hope you get roasted in that video.
Well,
You were very confident, shut me down. You deserve it.
wow, look at the hostility. Far out.
But yeah, he was definitely a lot less smug in this till the end.
Yeah.
Then
But
we remembered him.
even then, it wasn't as smug, you know?
Yeah. All right, we got the invasion by Varys.
Our boy Varys.
Let's go.
Though House Durrandon titled themselves Storm Kings, they were little more than gusts. Their kingdom in the Stormlands had been doddering to its end for the past few centuries, helped along by other houses, most of all by House Horror, who were nearly finished with a monstrous castle at Harrenhal. Too large, and
Nearly
too costly to
finished.
seek to rule
Oh,
only the
they were the
Riverlands. King Argilac knew where the Ironborn would soon turn. You'd think a king who wanted to keep his crown would be wary of a man with fire-breathing monsters. But King Argilac Durrandon wasn't called the Arrogant for nothing. Determined to arrest his
I love
family's
all their
decline,
nicknames.
he sent an
Sums them
envoy
up.
to Dragonstone to enlist Aegon Targaryen and his dragons against his enemies. In exchange, Argilac offered lands he didn't have and a wife Aegon didn't need. For
Oh
as
my
the Valerians
God.
did, Aegon had wed his elder sister Visenya. Then, as the Valerians didn't,
Yeah.
he took the younger Rhaenys as well. 2 sisters, 2 wives. Perhaps that's why he was so keen to get off Dragonstone.
Oh.
Aegon countered Argilac with courtesy.
Love
He
that.
sent his own envoy requesting that Princess Durrandon's hand be given instead to Aegon's closest friend and rumored half-brother, Orys Baratheon. Argilac answered with a
yeah.
box and a note. These are the only hands your bastard shall have of me. Inside the box were the hands of Aegon's envoy.
Oh my
Aegon
god.
was waiting
Shit.
for such a pretext. As his army prepared to sail, ravens flew to every great lord of the 7 kingdoms. All bore the same message. From this day forth, there would be but one king in Westeros.
Oh,
Those who
damn.
bent the knee to Aegon of House Targaryen would keep their lands and titles. Those who took up arms against him would be thrown down, humbled, and destroyed. Poor old Argilac.
Shit.
He couldn't even match Aegon in arrogance. Aegon landed at the mouth of the Blackwater River and raised a primitive Aegon fort in the disputed land between Harren's and Argilac's kingdom, so that neither could
Oh, that's where
decide
that
whose
like
problem he
sigil.
was.
Wow.
Adopting the customs
cool.
of the 7 kingdoms, Aegon unfurled his own banner with a red 3-headed dragon breathing fire upon a black field. Visenya crowned him with a ruby-studded circlet of Valyrian steel, while Rhaenys hailed him as the first High King the continent had seen since the Dawn Age. As his lords and the gathered locals cheered him, Aegon named his loyal friend to a small council led by Orys Baratheon, who he
Okay,
called
so that's how
my
that started.
strong right hand. The title stuck, and a bastard became the first Hand of the King. But for now, Aegon's kingdom contained only a rocky island and a handful of fields. The other kings had larger armies, ships, castles, and thousands of years of
But he
rule.
had dragons.
But Aegon had dragons. He had chosen for the words of his house, fire and blood. Before he was done,
Pretty epic.
the rivers, fields, and skies would turn red.
Yeah, damn. I mean, we've seen that a few times now, haven't we?
Dude, imagine that. Like, you've got all these systems in place, different lords and kings, and then here rocks up this guy, 3 dragons, and you pretty much everything you've got to fight with is no match. Like, wow.
I know.
It would be. I see why people want a prequel of Aegon's dynasty, because it would be pretty surreal.
But can I just say, he was generous in the fact that he's like, look, if you're fine with this, then you can keep your lands. You can do things as you've been doing with some small exceptions.
Yeah, I get it. You know, why people obviously challenged it, but for the most part, he wasn't. Well, as far as tyrants go, he's probably one of the better ones. He said, look, I'm going to take over, but I'm going to give you guys your freedom to do run as you please, as long as I'm going to have, you know, this certain respect and role here. But he wasn't really stepping on their toes. Like, from what we've heard, he wasn't really telling them to change their ways and
well, that's the way
do
we've
things his
understood
way.
it anyways.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got House Hoare, Ironborn Kings of the Riverlands by Euron Greyjoy and Viserys Targaryen. Oh, this is not a good mix.
I know. Let's see.
Harren of House Hoare inherited a kingdom that stretched from the Iron Islands to the Triton. Too great a kingdom to rule from a castle as shitty as Pike. For 40 years, his Ironborn plundered the Riverlands for stone, timber, and slaves to build a seat worthy of him. Legend has it that masons laid the final stone in Harrenhal on the very day that Aegon landed in Westeros. Could have been a divine omen. Could have been the masons wanted to fuck off before the dragons got there. They weren't the only ones. At Aegon's approach, Harren's river lords revolted, led by House Tully. I thought Harren noticed. Harrenhal could repel an army of 1,000,000 men. No ladder could summit its walls, and no ram could shatter them.
Oh, they got
the
screwed.
castle was as impregnable as an old
With a
mate's
great
gun.
castle minus dragons.
Harren shut his gates around himself, his sons and his Ironborn, and waited for Aegon's army to drain back into the muck. When Aegon finally saw the monstrous castle, he asked for parley. Harren granted it. Valyria had been the greatest empire the world had ever seen. Harren wanted to piss on its ashes.
Yield now, and you may remain as Lord of the Iron Islands. Yield now, and your sons will live to rule after you.
That's pretty good.
You see my army outside your walls. You see my dragons.
What is outside my walls is of no concern. Those walls are strong and thick.
Dragons fly.
But stone doesn't burn.
Damn, he was too confident.
You're mistaken.
Your line shall end.
Harren spat and returned to his castle. Once inside, he promised lands, riches, and Tully's daughters to whoever could bring down Aegon or his dragon. As the sun sank below the horizon, all of Harren's men patrolled the battlements, hearing wings in every gust of wind. But the moon rose and sank, and no dragon appeared.
While the Ironborn were winning the
okay.
battlements, Aegon drove his dragon Balerion higher and higher in the night sky, so that even the great castle of Harrenhal looked like an anthill below them. Then they plunged straight into the castle, well inside the guarded walls.
Shit.
The 5 towers of Harrenhal reached towards Aegon like a hand. Balerion opened his mouth and bathed all the fingers in flame.
Harren was right. Stone doesn't burn, but men do.
Yeah.
Even when they're Ironborn.
They've underestimated him
The
big
dragon
time.
blasted my ancestors into ash that choked the survivors when they screamed.
Euron's loving
Harren's
it.
soldiers leapt from the battlements and died. They huddled against the walls and died. They fled across the yard and died. Harren and his sons took shelter inside the castle. The stone didn't burn, But as Beleriand blasted it with fire, it glowed white hot. The world's greatest castle became the world's greatest oven, baking
Literally.
the last of House Horror within it.
Outside the castle walls,
Crazy.
the towers of Harrenhal glowed red against the night and began to twist and melt like 5 huge candles, with liquid stone trickling down their sides like wax.
Oh, wow.
The next morning, Aegon forged a new Riverlands. He named the rebel Edmund Tully as his Lord Paramount of the Trident, and had the other river lords swear him fealty as their new liege. For centuries, House Horror had terrorized the Riverlands. Under House Tully, the Riverlands would at last return to peace and prosperity.
Yeah, okay.
After the castle cooled enough to allow men inside, Aegon ventured into the ruin he'd made of Harrenhal. He saw the ashen bodies, the scorched stone, and the mangled and melted swords of his fallen enemies.
That's my
To
word.
his men's confusion, he ordered these useless swords collected and sent to his Aegon fort.
And thus the throne was born.
Holy shit.
Damn, there's a lot of just building up of the Targaryen dynasty in this. I can sort of understand why, I think, because we're really coming to this point in the show now where Jon and Daenerys are going to do something very special. And I think all of this is really leading towards that.
Yeah, like really getting the history of it. I mean, he didn't sound that cruel, to be fair. I mean, I get it from a perspective of, okay, people were already ruling those lands and they were fine with it and whatnot. I'm sure there were wars anyways, but
He was quite fair and reasonable in his approach.
yeah, I mean, even when we're talking about, you know, taking those riverlands and then the Tullys creating peace and stuff, when Torrens, I think was the house name, you know, was terrorizing everyone. So I don't know, which one would you prefer?
Yeah, he almost took out a terrible family. And when he sent them back requests, can't remember what it was, but they sent him back hands of his envoys.
Yeah.
So, you know, to still give it a chance after that, yeah, I don't know. That sort of made their bed in the world of Game of Thrones.
I know, yeah, true.
Now we've got House Durrandon, The Storm Kings by Varys. Always got time for Varys.
While Aegon marched on Harrenhal after his coronation, Orys Baratheon had taken most of his forces and his queen Rhaenys with her dragon south to deal with the excuse for the invasion. Argilac the Arrogant, king of the Stormlands. Argilac had his seat at Storm's End, a castle considered the most impregnable in Westeros.
The graphics
after
are really
Harrenhal.
nice.
Wow, especially this
Argilac may
one.
have been arrogant, but he wasn't stupid or a coward. His lords advised him to shut his gates and wait out the siege. But he'd heard what had happened at Harrenhal and refused to die a suckling pig cooked in his own castle.
I mean, fair
He
enough.
would meet victory or defeat the same way, with sword in hand.
I respect it.
He called
Okay.
his banners and marched to meet
So he
Orys
fought.
Baratheon in the field. Thanks to Rhaenyra's dragon, Meraxes, Orys knew Argilac was coming, how many men he had, and how fast he marched. So Orys simply seized the high ground and dug in on the hills to wait for Argilac. As the two armies approached, the wind rose to meet them and the rain poured from the sky, a gale which would give the battle its
Stormland at
name,
its best.
the last storm. King Argilac's lords urged him to wait for the weather to die down. But a Storm King saw that the rain was blowing into the faces of the Baratheon men on their hills. And Argilac outnumbered the Baratheon host 2-1, with 4 times as many
Damn.
knights and heavy horse. Argilac attacked.
I kind of feel for them. They got screwed over.
Argilac led his knights against the Baratheon line, but the hills were steep and the rain had beat the earth to mud. The war horses foundered and slipped, and the chargers collapsed. The battle seemed lost, until Argilac ordered his spearmen up the hill. Blinded by the rain, the Baratheons didn't see them until it was too late. One
Oh, no
hill
way.
fell, then another, and another, until only one remained in the Baratheon center. If Argilac could break through there, he could split the invading army and flank both halves. Argilac and his men charged, and the Baratheon line broke, revealing Queen Rhaenys and Meraxes. Argilac's vanguard burst into flame and his men
Oh,
panicked.
shit.
The victory charge
That's what
fell
you
into
don't
chaos,
want.
and Argilac himself was thrown from his horse. But he didn't yield. When Oris
Respected.
Yeah.
he found the old king holding off half a dozen men, another half dozen dead at his feet. Oris dismounted to meet the king on equal footing and offered Argilac one final chance to yield. Argilac cursed him instead. As the storm raged around them, the grizzled old warrior and the bearded upstart fought for life and kingdom. In the end, Argilac got his wish. He died, sword in hand.
Yeah, died
As
in
word
battle.
of Argilac's death
It's better than
spread,
just sitting in your
his
castle doing
lords
nothing.
and knights threw down their swords and fled. Oris and his vanguard rode to
Damn.
Storm's End to
So they
claim
took their banners
Argilac's
as well.
castle for Aegon, only to find the gates barred and the walls manned. Argilac's daughter had assumed his crown, and the new Storm Queen was as fond of yielding as her father.
Oh,
She
so
declared
they had
that
a
Oris
queen
would win only
temporarily.
bones, blood, and ashes here. But her men were weaker than her, and that night Oris found Argilac's daughter delivered, gagged, chained,
Oh,
and
shit.
naked to his camp. Argilac had refused to give Oris her hand. Now Oris could have any part of her
Oh
he
my
wished.
god.
But Oris unchained the girl, wrapped his cloak around her, and poured her a glass of wine. He told her he would take the arms, banner, and words of House Durrandon to honor her father's courage in the last storm.
That's nice.
Conveniently, Oris had none of his own to discard first. The crowned stag became the sigil of House Baratheon, and Storm's End their seat. Argilac's daughter would even remain in her home, though as a lady instead of a princess. The Stormlands were now Aegon's, and as tribute, Aegon demanded the swords of the men Oris had defeated. For what purpose? Oris didn't know.
Interesting. Thus it began.
Okay.
Damn,
So
the
they had a
visuals of that one were
queen
pretty.
for literally
Oh,
like
maybe
a
you
few
didn't
hours.
realize. Maybe you didn't realize. I actually started that.
Go, my king.
Like, well, the visuals of that one were actually really nice. That was one of the most impressive visuals I've seen in History of the Law so far.
Yeah, yeah. And it was just beautiful, like seeing the castle and the water flowing and
It's a
yeah.
really interesting story. I don't know if it's just my mood today, but I feel like it's one of the best histories in law so far for me, just in terms of my immersion to the wonder and the history of this
World,
just world
yeah.
and everything that's happening. I don't know. I'm finding it really interesting. Maybe I'm liking the Aegon's dynasty stories a lot, but just I'm finding it very fascinating. I'm actually enjoying it.
Yeah, well, I'm so immersed in this, like I'm barely talking. I'm just like soaking it all in because it's a lot of stories that we've heard before, but also new stories and different perspectives of the older stories. So yeah, it has been quite interesting. Yeah, it's interesting hearing Varys's perspective. I mean, he wasn't there, so he just gathers all the information and then talks about what most people are saying and then maybe what the other side is thinking as well. But he's usually quite unbiased from my perspective anyways. So it's interesting when he speaks about Aegon and, you know, the Baratheon in such a kind-hearted way compared to, like, he obviously spoke about how brutal they can be, but also, you know, being kind to the daughter and things like that.
Yeah. Okay, so now we've got House Lannister, King of the Rock, and House Gardener, Kings of the Reach by Jaime Lannister. Okay, this is definitely not going to be biased.
Aegon now ruled 2 of the 7 kingdoms, but he would no longer be able to take the rest piecemeal. For the first time in thousands of years, the kings put aside their squabbles and joined forces against a common enemy. My ancestor, King
Which is
Loren
what they
of
have
House
to do
Lannister,
now.
was head of the wealthiest family in the
But,
7
you know,
kingdoms.
Cersei.
When King Loren joined his forces to Mern of House Gardener, King of the Reach, they had the mightiest army in history, a so-called Iron Fist, to break the would-be conqueror. But while an iron fist can smash a man's face in battle, you'd look silly hunting birds or beasts with it.
I
And
know.
Aegon had a creature that was both. The kings had never even seen a dragon, let alone fought one. They had fought each other for thousands of years, and victory always
Yeah, it's a
went to
game
the
changer,
larger
the dragons, man.
Yeah, that's what they were used
a
to.
force 5 times that of Aegon's could manage 1 dragon. But Aegon
Delusional.
arrived with 3. Still, the Lannisters and Gardeners hoped for victory. The battlefield they chose was a wide plain with firm ground and clear skies, perfect for archers and mounted cavalry. But neither of the kings spared a thought for why the ground was firm. There had been no rain for a fortnight, which meant all the wheat and grass on it were bone dry.
Oh,
Perfect
dude.
for dragons.
That's a
The
bad call.
kings looked like they would emerge victorious. When the horn blew for battle, their armies swept around Aegon's flanks, and their iron fist of mounted knights smashed through his center before the dragons could even enter the fray. But then, Aegon
God, the
and
shadow.
his sisters took flight and unleashed their dragons not on the soldiers, but on the dry fields all around them. The iron fist unclenched and became a hand outstretched for mercy.
Oh my god, that Targaryen
As Aegon
music.
promised, he had none. More than 4,000 men died in the fires, another 1,000 escaping them. Tens of
Holy
thousands
shit.
returned home as monsters, burned and scarred beyond recognition. House
Shit.
Gardner never returned at all. The Field of Fire, as the singers call it, claimed the last of the Gardner line, and House Tyrell rose in their stead as Lords of
That's
the
when
Reach
that
and
happened.
Wardens of the South. As for my
Damn.
illustrious ancestor, when King Lawrence saw the battle was lost, he rode through a wall of flame and smoke to safety, or at least to a heroic capture a day later, where he laid his sword before
I was gonna
Aegon
say
and
carried it out.
Aegon, true to his word, spared him and confirmed House Lannister as Lords of Casterly Rock and Wardens of the West. Why
So
would
Gardner got the raw into the
a
stick big
Lannister
time.
always pays his debts, and now we owed our lives to the crown. That was worth centuries of subservience at least. Besides, Aegon had a fetish for collecting swords, not heads. He added Lawrence to the pile his men had retrieved from the Field of Fire.
I mean,
and
even
sent
that's
them back to the
nicer.
Aegon Fort.
True.
Like leave the bodies to rest kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, what's left of them, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. After being burnt to a crisp, maybe that's why you couldn't collect heads. But yeah.
Yeah, wow. So Gardner definitely got the raw end of the stick there. We know about how the Tyrells rose, and then the Lannisters sort of yielded in the end. They played that longer game.
Yeah, but did I understand correctly that he was saying that his ancestor kind of ran away from the battle when he knew it was lost, and then he got captured again later? That's what I understood just
Yeah,
then.
well, yeah, he escaped through the flames, and then got captured the day later.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Now
so
this one's going to be interesting.
House Stark, Kings of the Winter by Sansa Stark. Now, I wonder if they're going to try and... Because this is, again, set before the season when we knew Sansa was jealous.
Yes.
We didn't know the outcome yet. So they might have more jealousy in her tone and what she's talking about. Who knows?
All right, let's see.
With most of the south in Aegon's hands, the best chance to throw back the conqueror now lay with the north, if we cared enough to try. Unlike our southern rivals, the Stark Kings of Winter didn't forge the north into one kingdom for glory or gold. There is little of either here, but to survive. Alone in
Yeah.
Westeros,
I love the
the
North.
north remembered when worse than dragons lay waste to armies. Thousands of years ago, the sun set on the realms of men and the long night began. A new race emerged from the ice and snow, the White Walkers. They demanded no crown, offered no terms, spared no life, and the dead marched with them. With humanity
Oh my
facing
God.
extinction, a Stark sought out the children of the forest, the most ancient beings in Westeros, and convinced them to ally with the men they'd once fought. Together, the two races pushed the Walkers back into the land of always winter and sealed it off from the Seven Kingdoms with the wall.
Shit.
Until
300
now.
miles of ice, stone, and earth, rising nearly 700 feet tall. To guard
Insane,
it, they
dude.
established
And now it's
the Night's
crushed.
Watch, a brotherhood sworn to defend the living from the dead, whose vows erase both titles and crimes.
After the long night, the North tried to forget it belonged to a continent. Perhaps through pride, perhaps through sheer ignorance. You never can tell with the North. But as news of Aegon's dragons spread, Torrhen Stark, the King of Winter, knew he couldn't forget Westeros any longer, and summoned his lords to Winterfell. Many fools shrugged off the threat, while the rest placed wagers on how long the South would take to burn. Torrhen silenced them with a command to assemble their armies and descend from the north in force.
As the kings
Oh,
of the
shit.
Rock and the Reach burned on the Field of Fire, the greatest northern force since the Long Night crossed the neck into the Riverlands. But when King Torrin arrived at the
The music's
Trident,
like a
he
G
saw,
up.
on the opposing riverbank, the combined strength of all Aegon's conquered kingdoms. A force larger than Torrin's own by half. And
Shit.
with 3 dragons.
Yeah,
That night,
game over.
King Torrin called a conference of all his lords and advisors. Some wanted to fight and trust northern valor to carry the day. and burn
I
the
wish that
Trident.
would work.
The wisest of them wanted to withdraw to Moat Cailin, the fortress which had thrown back every southern invasion, and burn there. One suicidal lord
Like what for?
even wanted to ambush Aegon's camp in the dark and kill the dragons as they slept, or at the very least, their riders. It's hard to tell what would have been his fate. Burning, beheading, dismemberment, perhaps all 3.
Oh my
ancestor
god.
listened to their counsel, and in the morning crossed the Trident under a flag of parley. Then King Torrin of House Stark laid his ancient crown at Aegon's feet and was named Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North.
I mean, best outcome, honestly.
He had no choice, and thanks to him, our soldiers returned to their homes whole and unharmed. The swords that Aegon took from them were not twisted, burnt, or mangled.
Maybe something Cersei should learn from.
Yeah, interesting. Put his pride aside, which is what our boy Johnny is doing right now.
Yeah, what Tormund told him to do. I mean, it was actually interesting hearing Viserys and Sansa there because you're hearing the same story, which is the essence of this, but from a different perspective, but literally hand in hand. And, you know, we hear Sansa glorifying that he knelt, and then Viserys glorifying that they were able to make him kneel. Like, yeah, I don't know, it's funny.
It's good.
Do you get what I'm trying to say, though?
Yeah, sure.
No, as if you don't.
Kind of. Okay, now we have
No, I
House.
will clarify.
Oh, no, I don't want to listen to it.
Let me clarify. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Like, Viserys is still talking down on the Starks for kneeling, and Sansa's glorifying it. They have different, like, perspectives.
Yeah.
It's all about survival, and that's probably the wisest thing they could have done, as in the Starks. So I think that's what Sansa's also trying to do.
Yep. Agreed.
Okay, so this one's House Aaron, Kings of the Vale. By a little finger.
It's been interesting.
The Vale of Arryn was the last of the great kingdoms left. Old and proud, House Arryn did what they always did in times of strife. They
Before
shut
you
the
killed them all.
bloody gate, sealing off the Vale. Then the Queen Regent Shara of House Arryn retreated with her son, the boy King Ronald, into the Eyrie, their family's impregnable fortress. From the top of their mountain they could look down on Westeros far below, its problems hidden beneath the clouds. But one day, Queen Shara entered the outer courtyard to find her young son sitting on the knee of Visenya Targaryen and ogling her dragon Vhagar beside her.
Jeez,
remember
imagine
that.
that.
Asked for another cake at dinner. Little King Ronald asked his mother if he could go flying on the nice lady's dragon. Visenya smiled at Shara. So, Shara imagined, did Vhagar. Remembering her manners, Shara asked if she could have Visenya brought some wine or food. She must be tired
That's a bit
after
cruel,
such
this
a long
part.
flight. But Visenya demurred. Bored with his mother's pleasantries, Ronald demanded an answer. Poor boy. He didn't even understand the question.
Yeah, I
Shara hesitated for a
know.
moment, then asked Visenya, as a mother, if it was safe for the boy. Visenya assured her it was. What choice did Shara have? Whilst her son
No,
circled the
go to your
castle,
room.
she collected his little ringlet, her own regent's coronet, and the ancient falcon crown of mountain and vale which the Arryns had worn for thousands of years. Ronald had taken to the sky as a king, but he landed as a lordling. Perhaps he considered his ancient rights a fair trade for a few minutes of flight, as a little boy would. More
Yeah, I
likely,
know.
he didn't even notice the 3 crowns at Visenya's feet, or recognize the swords of his garrison beside them.
Damn. Yeah, we know that. We've heard that story before.
House Aaron breeds really naive, really childish little boys.
Yeah, I think because they're so protected from everything that sheltering almost makes them not very like street smart, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. But I mean, let's be fair, if you want to ride a dragon, you know,
Yeah.
as a kid.
So now we got Aegon, first of his name by Viserys.
We're hearing a lot about Viserys. It makes me think that your little theory's correct.
The heads of Westeros had bowed to Aegon, but its heart still beat free. Old Town, the center of the faith of the Seven. There dwelt the High Septon, the father of the faithful, who commanded the obedience of all Westeros, save the savages of the north and their old gods. When Aegon had landed in Westeros, the High Septon had locked himself in the Starry Sept and fasted for 7 days and 7 nights, one for each of his gods.
Oh, wow.
All he received for his trouble was the divine wisdom that if Old Town took up arms against the dragon, the city would burn, faithful and faithless alike. After the submission of House Stark, Aegon marched towards Old Town, steeling himself for another battle. But he found the gates open, with the High Septon welcoming him. The pious fool even had the arrogance to grant what Aegon had already won, and anointed the last Valyrian as Aegon of House Targaryen, first of his name, King of the Andals and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms.
That's when all the titles came in.
The realm. As if titles meant anything to a man before whom time itself now
So I feel like he earned
the
it,
Maesters
and everyone
would
else
hence
kind of took
divide all
it.
history into before and after conquest. Most expected Aegon to stay and make Old Town his seat. But soon after his coronation, Aegon returned to the mouth of the Blackwater River, where he had first set foot on Westeros. A small town had since sprouted around his primitive fort. To honor their new master, the locals dubbed it King's Landing, though it looked more fit for a hedge nut,
that's where
with
it
wooden
started.
palisades, muddy
Makes
streets,
sense.
and piles of mangled swords carted in from every corner of the conquest.
So love on the word mangled.
But when Aegon made it his court, wood became stone, black mud was buried beneath a red keep, and the collected swords of Aegon's foes were blasted by dragonfire and became a seat fit for the conqueror and the greatest dynasty this world has ever known.
It's an
House
epic seat.
Targaryen, my
Crazy.
family, my
He's so
throne.
proud. Your throne,
So
mate,
it
you're
should
dead.
have
Okay, so he talked in hindsight, like almost from the dead.
Yeah.
My throne, so it should have been, yeah, wow.
I don't know if he's looking above or looking below, but either way, he's talking to us.
Yeah, there's a lot of G up for Aegon's conquering.
Yeah, I
The
know.
main focus of this one's really centered around
Well,
the drag. I think it's because it's going to tie in a lot to season 8.
well, for sure, but it's funny because it's like Dany's ancestors. That's what my brain always goes to. But no, the actual reality is John's ancestors. I mean, he is now Aegon. Like he is Aegon. Oh
I
my
know.
god.
And we're thinking the prince that was promised.
Oh my god, this is
I
so
can't
cool.
wait till Dany finds out.
I just want to start season 8 already.
I know. Tell me about it.
That was a bit of a delayed reaction.
Well, I wasn't expecting that.
You weren't really listening to me, were you?
Silence, fool. All right, now we have House Martell, Princess of Dawn by the legend of Varys.
We couldn't get Oberyn back.
But while Aegon titled himself Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, in reality he held only 6. The 7th, Dawn, had never knelt. Visenya had flown into the Vale and returned with its crown. Mimicking her sister, Rhaenys had flown over the enemy force holding the passes into Dawn and landed in the castle of its ruling lady, Princess Meria of House Martell.
Yeah, this is a bit of
Meria
a
was 80
refresher.
years old, fat, bald, and blind. Behind her back, many sniggered at her as the yellow toad of Dawn. The beautiful Rhaenys probably thought as much
Yellow
when they met.
toad.
She demanded Princess Meria kneel to her brother Aegon, though she allowed that on account of Meria's age and health a simple vow of submission would do. But the princess told the queen that the Targaryens weren't wanted in Dawn, and no Martell would ever bow, bend, or break no matter how badly they burned.
Well, she's a tough
Rhaenys
cookie.
could have mounted
That's
her
where the
dragon
House
right
West come
then and
from.
roasted Meria in the castle as her brother had done at Harrenhal. But whatever she saw in Meria's eyes scared her right back to King's Landing, with
Oh,
a dragon's
damn.
tail between its legs.
Really?
After Aegon's
I'm
coronation,
bowed, I'm bent, I'm
Rhaenys
broken.
returned to Dorne with Aegon and Visenya, and their dragons. But no armies met them in the field, and no lords defied them in their castles. As the dragons approached, Dorne simply emptied. House Martell had learned from Harrenhal and the Field of Fire. The dragons were unbeatable in battle, but wars were more than battles. Unopposed, Aegon claimed Dorne for his own, but as soon as he returned to King's Landing, his castellans were hurled off towers, and his royal garrison vanished in the desert, never to
Oh
be
my
seen
god.
again.
Oh,
Except
shit.
perhaps when the winds change and the sands cough up old bones and armor.
I know, far
Rhaenys
out.
returned on Meraxes, intent on revenging herself against Marya Martell. But Dorne was no longer empty. The Dornish kept Marya's promise and fought even while burning under dragon flame. And they won.
Shit.
One day, a bolt pierced the eye of Meraxes and knocked the dragon out of the sky. House
Oh,
Martell
shit.
remained unbroken, unlike the unfortunate Rhaenys. In their wrath, Aegon and Visenya set flame to every castle and city but Sunspear, trying to turn the people against House Martell. But the Dornish stayed loyal, and when Aegon returned to King's Landing, he found assassins waiting for him in the streets of his own capital.
shit. They were
If not for
prepared.
Visenya, the conqueror would not have enjoyed his conquest for very long. From then on, the king and his family would be guarded by the 7 greatest knights in the realm.
Oh,
the King's
shit.
Guard.
That makes
When
sense
Marya
now.
died in her sleep, her weak and tired son sued for peace. But old Marya had exhausted Aegon as well, and he granted the request. The Targaryens still wanted Dorne, and eventually they would have it, but not at the point of a sword. They would buy it the same way great lords buy anything, with a daughter.
Yeah, damn. So Dawn really held out. What I find interesting too, and I was waiting to confirm, was that again, 3 dragons, 1 was killed, 2 remain. It's sort of
Well, was
replicating.
it killed or injured?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It just fell out of the sky. It looked like it was
Yeah.
done, but if it was killed, then it's sort of again that prophecy is being followed again with Jon and Daenerys.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
That makes me nervous though, because obviously they didn't have any special like arrows and stuff like we do now because of Qyburn. So they're massive. And if like one arrow can get the eye and ruin a dragon, like they are, you know,
Yeah, it's
not
possible.
as
But also,
strong
we don't know how arrogant the rider would have been at that point. They never expected anything to contest a dragon, so
Yes.
they were pretty arrogant.
Yes, true. And it could just be luck. I mean, if it's like flaming you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, a couple of spoilers remaining towards this end bit, so we might be chopping it around a little bit. But we've got The Last Dragon by Viserys Targaryen, Jaime Lannister, Sansa Stark, and Varys. I've never seen 4 people in one, so
Bit of
that's
everyone's.
probably a big one.
After the conquest, when men looked up, they saw dragons. Nobles learned to keep their eyes down, but the gods weren't used to sharing the heavens. When Aegon died, the High Septon led the Faith and its army in revolt, claiming that the Valyrian tradition of wedding brother to sister was an abomination in the eyes of the 7, though no one could explain where the divine mother and father had come from. My ancestor Maegor
True.
the Wise, or Maegor the Cruel as men slander him, put a bounty on the head of every militant priest, and miraculously, the faith soon
Gone,
returned to the
right.
sects. With
Money
Dawn in
talks.
the fold and the faith put in its place, none in Westeros were left to oppose my family. One of my foolish ancestors didn't see what separated his bastards from our family proper and legitimized them all on his deathbed. Adopting the name Blackfire, the bastards proved their nature and tried to seize their father's kingdom. And when they failed, their sons tried. When the sons failed, their grandsons tried, until finally Sir Barristan the Bold, Knight of the Kingsguard, slew Maelys the
shit.
Monstrous in the War of the Ninepenny Kings, ending the last of the Blackfire line.
Yeah, wow.
Ultimately, without our
Damn.
dragons and with our blood diluted by commoners, we failed to see the greatest threat growing under our noses.
Which was?
Oh.
We're not going to find out.
And where there were none, he worked to create them. As one of his king's guard, I saw firsthand that a king who couldn't rule his own mind couldn't rule 7 kingdoms.
I mean, that's a pretty fair
endured his
statement.
reign because we hoped his son Rhaegar would ride the realm when he ascended to the throne.
Right.
But then, Rhaegar proved as mad as his father and snatched Lyanna Stark, daughter of the Warden of the North and betrothed to Robert Baratheon, Lord of the Stormlands. When Lyanna's father and eldest brother demanded justice, the Mad King obliged.
Alright, so Lyanna sort of screwed him over too.
Yeah.
Because she didn't explain her
with
intent.
2 murders, the Mad King then ordered Jon Arryn, Lord of the Vale, to execute his 2 wards, Robert Baratheon and Eddard Stark. Instead, Jon Arryn raised the Vale in revolt. Ned Stark
I appreciate that, you know.
Sentries and raised the north, and Robert won 3 battles in a single day to unite the Stormlands behind him.
That would have been
only
crazy.
to be defeated by a royalist army and forced to flee, leaving his home of Storm's End besieged.
The Hand of the King finally cornered Robert in the town of the Stony Sept and sent his soldiers door to door searching for the rebel leader. But the villagers hated the Mad King and loved Robert and kept him 1 step ahead of the soldiers until only one refuge remained. As the soldiers closed in, all the town bells rang out. Hearing of Robert's plight, our father and Jon Arryn had rushed to the Riverlands and enlisted our grandfather Hoster Tully to help them. Together, they routed the Hand's army and rescued Robert. To celebrate and cement the Tully alliance, our father wed our mother Catelyn, and Jon Arryn took our aunt Lysa.
History
Only
was
a fortnight
made.
later, both men rushed back into the field, for the dragon had finally woken.
Wow.
While my father's servants were losing my father's kingdoms, my brother Rhaegar had been cooped up with his mistress, whore, whatever else. I'd call her a distraction.
Oh
but now
my
Rhaegar
God.
came to his senses and returned to King's Landing. He persuaded our father to summon his
And left her at the
estranged
Tower
friend,
of Joy.
Lord Tywin Lannister, the richest and most powerful lord
So
in the
he
realm.
persuaded him to bring Tywin.
Rhaegar himself would lead the royal army against the usurper, Robert. On the banks of the Trident, my
mad
brother
armor.
fought the man whose wife he'd stolen, and who fought to steal his birthright in return. In the end, Robert wanted it more. His hammer shattered my brother's armor, and its rubies fell into the river like raindrops, vanishing in the current.
With Rhaegar's defeat, nothing stood between Robert and King's Landing. Imagine the
Literally.
king's surprise a fortnight later when he saw not stags, but lions outside his gates. His former hand, Tywin Lannister, had come to the capital with a force even Robert couldn't match, claiming to be loyal to the king. Trusting what he wanted to believe, Aerys ordered the gates open, and the Lannister forces dutifully began to rape, pillage, and murder the king's actual loyal
Again, that
subjects.
sneaky snake.
When Eddard Stark finally arrived at the capital with Robert's army, he found Lannister banners hanging over the sacked city, Targaryen corpses littering its streets, and Sir Jaime Lannister sitting on the Iron Throne.
Yeah, which we
Below
know.
him, the Mad King Aerys, whom Sir Jaime had sworn to guard, lay in a pool of his own blood from a sword thrust through his back. Lord
I mean, he
Eddard
got what he
might have thanked Sir
deserves.
Jaime for doing the realm a favor, but honorable as he was, Lord Eddard condemned Sir Jaime as a kingslayer, a name he would never escape.
It's a bit unfair. That is unfair.
Unlike Lord Eddard, Robert appreciated my contribution to his glorious victory. He pardoned me for my crime and even kept me on his Kingsguard beside Sir Barristan Selmy, who'd been wounded at the Trident fighting for Rhaegar. True, both of us had failed to protect our Targaryen charges, but perhaps that's what Robert liked most about us. When my father presented Robert with the bodies of Rhaegar's wife and 2 children, Ned Stark hiked up his skirts and demanded Robert send their killer to Dorne and me to the Wall. But I saw what Ned couldn't. Robert was ashamed of the bodies, and more ashamed of his relief.
Oh,
He knew
wow.
that Rhaegar's heirs had to die or his throne would never be safe. But glorious heroes didn't kill children. They simply didn't punish their murderers.
No doubt I would have suffered a similar fate. But my father had wisely sent me and my pregnant mother to Dragonstone. When the usurper heroically sent men to kill me and my newborn sister to protect his stolen throne, a loyal knight smuggled us across the narrow sea to Essos. And so the last dragons of Valyria, heirs to the greatest dynasty from the greatest civilization this world has ever known, slept in sewers and foraged for scraps in alleyways. One step
they
ahead
really
of the
struggled.
usurper's knives, and one step behind the whispers of his spy master, Varys. But we won't run forever. One day I'll return to my kingdoms with an army, take back my throne, and repay all traitors with the only coin my family knows. Fire and blood.
That's pretty epic, honestly.
Damn.
Honestly, this Histories and Lore, Viserys doesn't sound like a little old brat like he used to.
Yeah.
Whereas now, like, I just felt a presence from him. And I feel like that's because everything that we're leading up to, I mean, I guess that's why Dany did name one of her dragons after Viserys, because her conquest is what he was pretty much living for, what he helped them both survive for. Yeah, he got lost along the way, got a bit to his head and things like that, but that was really his goal, and that's what he talks about so proudly. So
it's an interesting one, though. Everyone's claim on the throne. It's sort of, you know, everyone's got a bullshit claim to the throne because Aegon technically stole it. Yes, he won any battle, but he was a foreigner who came and stole it by having a power no one had seen.
Yeah.
Then the people stole it back, and then the Targaryens say what's rightfully mine. Well, who's to say what was rightfully yours? You know, that's the whole thing sort of muddled. Although I obviously think the new generation of Targaryens will be great rulers.
I think so.
But it is interesting that Lyanna, in hindsight, kind of screwed the Starks over big time, because by doing this wedding all undercover and not really saying anything, her brother and father died, thinking that she had been taken and captured.
Yeah.
Robert led a rebellion, which, you know, changed the realm drastically, which obviously the Mad King had to go anyway. But had Rhaegar been made king and Lyanna his wife, that might have been a much more peaceful realm for everyone.
Would have been very different. That's why I'm actually intrigued, and I would love to see it, like, in a show or a movie. How it all actually transpired. Like, how did they even get to chatting? How did they even fall in love? If it was done in secret, how did everyone come up with this conclusion that he stole it? Like, all these things that don't completely add up, but it is the story that everyone knows.
Yeah.
So
I think Robert's blind love at some point, you know, got to him. He could only believe that she must have been stolen because of making such a bad reputation.
You know, now everything that we know about Ned, in hindsight, like, he kept a really big secret, and, you know, he had the power to say the truth, and things could have changed. They could have been worse, they could have been better, we don't know. But he was so judgmental on Jaime, and I think him, out of all people, should know how grey things can be. It's not as black and white. Yeah, okay, the king that you were there needing to protect is now, like, in a pile of blood because of Jaime, but really there's more to it. I'm sure he didn't like the Mad King. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
I think that's Ned's one major character flaw.
Yeah.
Is that both keeping the secret of who Jon Snow really was, and even, you know, he saved when he fought Sir Arthur Dayne.
Yeah.
And he took credit for defeating him, even though he technically didn't. What was the surname?
Well, he did.
What was the surname?
Reed.
Reed. He was protecting the Reed house name. Well, no, he did it. Not in fair one-on-one combat, which honor demands.
No, yeah.
Reed stabbed him in the back or whatever, and then he finished him off.
Yeah.
That's not respect.
Yeah.
And not Ned's way. So, but Ned did these things to protect others' honors, and that's fine. But then, yeah, I would think that he should be able to understand Jaime's position, to write him off when he himself has had to keep secrets that many would deem, you know, dishonorable, is a little bit unfair and hypocritical. That being said, Ned himself wore the title of being dishonorable for something he didn't do.
Yes.
To bear that. So
protect
maybe
someone,
he sort of thought that was his severance. He deserved that punishment. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, agreed. He probably should have laid off Jamie a little bit. I think for me anyway, this was definitely one of the most enjoyable Histories and Lore. I don't know why, but the way the storytelling was done and yeah, the way it was told and shown, I just found it the most engaged. This is actually, usually I find it hard to be able to absorb it all, and there's times when I drift in and out just because it's quite lore heavy. But this one, I felt like I was able to absorb most of it and actually was quite engaged the whole time throughout. So it was, yeah, one of the most powerful ones for me.
Yeah, I actually do agree that this was actually an enjoyable one. It's, again, like I said before, a lot of the stories that we have heard before, but told maybe in a different way. And now, you know, we've got a lot more information at our fingertips. And even the way I'm absorbing the information and the stories is quite different. I'm really seeing through, okay, who's actually telling the story and why they're perceiving it in that way. And it gets quite interesting, doesn't it?
Well, guys, we hope you enjoyed yet another Histories and Lore, a reaction to the season 7. We've got one more of these.
Yes.
So stay tuned for that. And we've got the big season 8 coming up, the finale of this incredible series, which we are very much looking forward to. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed watching Histories and Lore with us. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you guys at the start of season 8.
See you guys.